Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as I show you how I changed my mind in my garden. So let's go. We are in what I call the bay window bed. There are a lot of beautiful things happening in here, but the one thing that's the star of the show is a beautiful plant called leopard's bane. I've told you a number of times in the past that when it comes to the leopard's bane, I like to keep it in this flower bed with no daffodils because I feel like the yellow daffodils that bloom in the spring would take away from the yellow of the leopard's bane. I admit it, I changed my mind. And the reason is, right now, this is in bloom. It's the star of the show. There's another area of my yard very close to here where all the daffodils have gone by. They would not be competing with these plants here. And in fact, when I look at that area of my yard, it's just quiet, it's asleep. It needs a pop of color. So what I want to do with you is I want to remove every other leopard's bane from this bed and I want to replace it with a bunch of daffodils. It goes against what I've said before, but I'm excited about it. I thought very hard about it. I think it's going to look really nice. The reason is there's a little bit of a lull in this flower bed when the daffodils are blooming in other parts of my yard. But then when the daffodils go by in that part of the yard, all of these guys wake up, but now there's a lull in that part of the yard. And I decided why not have pretty color in this bed as well as the other bed during a longer period of time. So let me take you for a little mini tour and show you what I'm talking about. This is the front side of my house, and you can see that there is a lot of color happening this time of year. But the yellow, that is called leopard's bane. I love that plant. It's one of the earliest spring blooming plants in my yard that's not a bulb. You can see that there are a bunch of the plants in here, and the reason is I've just been dividing and moving this plant within this flower bed. There's a nice pop of yellow color happening here. And I want to take you around, if we pan this way, towards where the lawn ends and where the woods begin. I've shown you in previous videos in a garden tour, which I'll link down below, when there was a lot of color happening down here. There were a ton of daffodils that were in bloom. And I'm going to bring you in for a closer look, and I want you to see what's going on in that area now. And here we are. The daffodils are starting to go by or have already gone by. And this flower bed is quiet right now. There will be things blooming during the next few months, but right now, as we look at it, there isn't a lot of color. That's why I thought, why not move a bunch of those leopard's bane down here just so we can get a nice pop of yellow color. And what better way to do it than take out every other daffodil and replace it with the leopard's bane. That way, in the bay window bed, we'll have some color going on when the daffodils are blooming up there. As I surveyed my garden this year, I noticed there isn't a huge overlap of when the daffodils are blooming as well as the leopard's bane. There's a slight overlap, but not a major overlap. So I say, let's do this change together. I think it's going to look really nice, and I can't wait to see what it looks like next year. So there's a nice patch of daffodils right there, and we're going to leave that patch there. You can see there are iris in here, there's daylilies, but as we move, there's another patch of the daffodils. We're going to go after that patch right there, and we're going to dig all the daffodils out. I have a bunch of mulch that I put down here last year, so I would prefer to move the mulch out of the way just to make it a little bit cleaner. That way when we dig, we're not making so much of a mess, and then when we're all done with our project in this one area, we can replace the mulch and put it back. Some of you might be wondering, wait a minute, I'm moving daffodils while they're still green. Isn't the rule of thumb that we're supposed to wait until the foliage has turned brown and died back? A lot of sources that you'll find will tell you that. But I will tell you my experience. I have moved many bulbs when they're still green like this. The key is not to cut the green back. Leave the green there so that they can still photosynthesize and they can feed the bulb. You don't want to cut the green back at this point. I am planning to move a ton of bulbs in the spring. I do every spring, in fact. So if I was to wait for all my bulbs to die back, I would probably run out of time. So I like to move quickly and do it while I can still see the foliage and I can see where the bulbs are. I don't want to dig right straight down, right beneath the base of the daffodil, because I could damage my daffodil. I want to come out a little bit from the base and then I can go ahead and dig. I'm also trying to be a little gentle because I do have drip irrigation in this bed. I don't remember exactly where it is, so I don't want to ruin my drip irrigation lines. I'm trying to work on all sides of the bulbs here just to make it a little easier to be able to pull them out. Where the lawn ends and where the woods begin, there are a lot of roots, a lot of tree roots. So it's a little bit trickier digging, but that's not going to stop me. And this is what it looks like when you pull it out. You can see nice roots, and I want you to notice where the white part is. When it comes to transplanting this bulb, I want to make sure that the roots, the bulb, and even the white part are below soil surface. And then the green part can be above soil surface. When you're doing a project like this, if by mistake the green part breaks off from the bulb, it's okay. It's preferred that that doesn't happen, but sometimes it does happen and you just go with it. You would still plant the bulb. You wouldn't just throw the bulb away. We've been having a lot of rain lately, and there's a little lull right now. So I figured I might as well start this project. Even if I don't finish it today, at least it started. Since I'm going through the effort of digging all these bulbs up, now is a great time to divide them. I want you to notice of this clump of bulbs, there was only one bloom. The rest of them were just leaves. When you have a lot of leaves and not a lot of blooms, that tells you it's time to divide your bulbs. And to divide them, I'm just barely pulling them apart, and each section will end up with a root. There, and now we have 5 individual bulbs or plants here that can get spaced out when we replant them. Since we have more rain coming later today and all day tomorrow, the soil is nice and wet. And not only that, I don't have to water these bulbs in after I move them. If you were to do this type of job and the soil was very dry, then afterwards what you want to do is make sure you water your bulbs in really well. And I can tell you these bulbs are in pretty deep, so we have to go fishing for them. I'm really glad that I changed my mind about this, because why have a whole space that we're just waiting for more color? Why not just make the change? I really enjoy doing that. I love looking around my yard, surveying it. And if there's one area that's popping with a bunch of color and there's another area that's lacking color, then why not play the good old switcheroo and switch around some plants? I feel like every season has something to offer when it comes to gardening. The one thing I really love about springtime is it's a great time to move around your plants. And in fact, I live for days like today where it's raining. I can be stuck inside, sad that it's raining, or I can be outside taking advantage of this nice, cool, wet weather and be moving my plants around. And for whatever reason, if next year I don't love this change that we're making, then I can move my plants around and do something different. I think that's part of the beauty of gardening, is experimenting and trying different things. But one thing I have learned is if you don't like something in your garden, don't live with it, change it. After all, you want to be able to really enjoy your garden. You shouldn't just have to stare at something that you don't like. It'll be interesting to see how the leopard's bane does here, because it does get a little bit less sun here than it does where it currently is located. So we'll have to see next year how it does. The last one, at least for this grouping, we ended up with 19 daffodil bulbs. That's a lot of daffodil bulbs to put in a hole. We'll see if we end up putting all of the bulbs in one single hole or what we end up doing. But now let's go and dig a clump of the leopard's bane. What we're doing here, where we're basically trying to add some additional color by switching out every other plant, I had done something very similar recently. I had a whole bunch of speedwell or Veronica, and I noticed that When it bloomed, it was beautiful. But when it was done blooming, there was a lull in this flower bed where there was no color. But then when I looked at another flower bed, there was a lot of beautiful color of the black-eyed Susan or Rebecca. So I ended up taking out every other Veronica and I replaced it with a Rebecca. That will be another experiment for this bed this year to see how it does in terms of that progression of color. Once again, I'm just digging, not right at the base, but a little bit away from the base. And I'm going to try my best not to divide this plant. It's a nice big clump, and I have so much of this plant, and I don't feel it would benefit from being divided this year because I just divided it a few years ago. And the other thing I am going to do is I'm going to leave behind a little bit of the soil because I don't want to make a big hole right here. I want to be able to just plunk in those daffodils. So I'm not going to take all the soil off. I'm just taking some of the soil off. Because when you think about it, this whole clump is going to get placed where those daffodils are. And we didn't take any soil from there. So we don't really need all of the soil that's on the bottom here, just some of it. So again, we want to make sure when we make our hole for our daffodils here, that it's at least this deep to accommodate the depth of our daffodil bulbs. I wouldn't want to be doing this type of project on a really hot, very sunny day. It's a perfect day to be doing it because it's cloudy, it's rainy, and it's just not as much shock on these plants. I mean, anything's possible. If you had to, you could do it on a sunny day, but I would recommend if you can avoid it, try not to do it on a sunny day. I'm noticing there's a rock right here. So actually, this is probably not the best place to put those daffodils, but guess what? We've already started digging here, and the depth is about as deep as those daffodils will go. They're just not going to be able to go any deeper. So we're going to plant them. Sometimes that happens, and it's going to be an experiment to see how they do. Let me bring one daffodil over and just see the depth first. I feel confident that these will be fine. I'm being lazy. If I wanted to, I could put the leopard's bane back in here and dig out another clump. We're going to go for it. Would I recommend it? No, but this is real life gardening. I'm going to put the daffodils in here. I don't think all of them are going to fit in this hole, but let's see how many we can get in. Whenever I transplant my daffodils or any other spring bulb, I do like to space them out. If I'm going to go through the effort of digging them up, I might as well space them out so that, like, for example, this daffodil here, it's going to get a little bit larger. So I don't want it necessarily touching all of these daffodils here. I want it to be spaced out so it can grow bigger and these can grow bigger. And I also try to pick it so that I have a couple of small daffodils and I have some large daffodils and everything in between. That way, next year, I'll have some that are blooming and some that won't be blooming, and that's okay. They will eventually bloom. You can put one more in. I think that's plenty. We have 8 bulbs in there, so we can go ahead and backfill. What I like to do is I basically like to anchor the bulbs in place before I really backfill. So I'm just taking some of the soil and I'm just putting it in and pressing down. And that way the bulbs are kind of anchored in where we placed them, and they won't move around too much as we then continue to backfill. I'm wearing my husband's gloves. They are huge on me. I've been gardening all morning and my other gloves are all soaking wet. So I had to make do with what I had. And as I'm backfilling, I'm also pressing down, trying to get these as straight as possible. It doesn't have to be perfect though. The key is, again, just make sure you leave the green on, that you don't cut the green off. My goal for this video is to show you my thought process and what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. I won't be doing all of the bulbs for you. You'll see it in a future garden tour once all of the leopard's bane has been moved and all the bulbs have been moved. But I did want to show you what I've started, why I'm doing what I'm doing, and it gives you something to look forward to in a future video. Not only this year, but in a future video next year as well, when we see the fruits of our labor. I'm just pressing down. Whenever you transplant bulbs like daffodils, they'll never look as nice once you've transplanted them. They'll look nice next year, but for this year, they'll be a little floppy. And I'm looking at this whole entire side. There isn't a lot of color. So really, as I'm pulling out the leopard's bane, if I have extra pieces, I could always plunk a few in, because why not, right? We'll see if I get to that. If not today, maybe tomorrow, maybe next year. Did the thought cross my mind to divide this leopard's bane? Absolutely. You know me. You know I love to divide plants. But I also know, due to the scope of this project, and you saw that it was not easy to dig out all those bulbs because they were in pretty deep. It's going to take me a while to dig out all those bulbs, move the bulbs, and dig out all of the leopard's bane that I want to dig out, every other one, and move those. So I have to be realistic with myself. And there's always next year. I could always come in and divide these down into half and move them around. But right now they are blooming. And normally when something is blooming like these are, I'm already putting it under shock by moving it while it's in bloom. I don't want to put it under additional shock by dividing it right now. Plus, again, due to amount of time, it's just more realistic for me to meet this goal of moving the plant but not dividing it right now. Because dividing it's just one other extra thing to do. Now I'm just backfilling around it, pushing down. And we have rain coming. If we didn't have rain coming, I'd be giving this a nice good drink of water. And now we have a little bit more color because the daffodils that are there are going to be going by within the next day or two. Whereas the leopard's bane will still bloom for another week or two. And as we make our way in this direction, there is another group of daffodils that are going to remain. They're going to stay there. And then there'll be another grouping of daffodils that I'm going to dig out and replace with the leopard's bane. I know I'm going to have an excess of bulbs. So at a minimum, what I'll end up doing is putting them in probably pots and with dirt and just letting them sit outside in an area where they continue to photosynthesize. And I'll think about what I'm going to do with them. Maybe I'll put more up along my driveway because I would love to have more along my driveway. And I could possibly do that project next week, for example. But while I wait, it's important to make sure that I'm still feeding the bulbs, that the bulbs are still getting the energy they need from the sun. Well, this is good. This is digging out a lot easier. Look at all these little teeny tiny baby bulbs. They did not bloom this year, and they probably won't bloom next year. But I know that when I plant them in a planting hole, I'll space them out enough so that they have room to grow. And if they don't bloom for another 2 years, then it's still well worth the wait. For me right now, it's go time for a lot of different things. I really should be planting out my annuals. My average last frost date is a few weeks away, but I was looking at the 10-day forecast and there really doesn't look like any chance of frost. But it's also go time for me when it comes to moving a lot of my bulbs around and dividing a lot of my plants in the yard, moving those around. So what I've decided to do is do a little bit of each of these things. So like today is a day of just moving some plants around, but then tomorrow would be a day of probably going and planting up some of my annuals in my window boxes or my hanging baskets. And then I also need to start hardening off a lot of my seedlings. And maybe you're in the same boat that I'm in. How do you figure out how you're going to spend your time? Because there's so many things to be done right now. Well, I can tell you the weather is going to be warming up quickly very soon. And once it starts warming up, I don't move as many of my spring bulbs and as many of my perennials. I don't like to do it when it gets too hot out. So I won't get all of them done this year, and that's okay. I am just kind of being selective on what I want to get done during the next few weeks. And no matter how hard I try with taking the shovel and being out far enough, it's inevitable. It happens to all of us, where as we're pulling out a bulb, by mistake, we slice through a bulb. But when you have so many, it's okay, it happens. And if that does happen, you just have to throw that bulb away. I just noticed I have an irrigation line there, so I need to be careful when I'm digging this one out. Phew, that was close. There we go. So many bulbs, so little time. So we have a leopard's bane, and then we have a grouping of daffodils that we just put in. And then we have a leopard's bane that we're going to keep, and then we have a leopard's bane that we're going to dig out. I was only going to film me taking out one grouping of the leopard's bane and one grouping of the daffodils. But we might as well keep going until the rain starts. We're on a roll here. And I might as well tell you anything else I want to tell you in this video that I feel is important. So when it comes to leopard's bane, I will share, I have tried to find the seeds on it. And when it comes to propagating plants, I love propagating plants from seed. But with this particular plant, for whatever reason, I have not had a lot of luck getting the seeds off of it. I suspect it's probably because I wait too long and I miss the window when the seeds get formed. I'm not really sure what it is, but I definitely have not had luck finding the seeds on leopard's bane. And if you've ever collected the seeds on leopard's bane, please let me know. I'd love to know. Don't you wish all perennials came out this easy? But I have had a lot of success being able to propagate it through division. So it's not a problem. I mean, you can't go wrong when you have a perennial that multiplies as quickly as this plant has for me. I think it's the best feeling when you can shop your own yard for plants. It's been a goal of mine during the last number of years to continuously be looking around my yard and just making notes of changes I want to make. And well, like I mentioned earlier, this is definitely not a change that was in the books for me this year or ever. I swore against it. I said that I didn't want to mix daffodils next to this. I didn't want them to compete, and here we are doing it. And I'm so glad. I think it's going to be a nice addition to this bed. And I think having daffodils in the bay window bed will also be a nice addition. I have been offering this plant for sale as my part of my backyard plant nursery, and it's been a very popular plant. A lot of people have been buying it. There's an area in my backyard that I've been cleaning out that has this plant there, and that's where I've been digging them up. One thing I want to point out is when we placed the first batch of the leopard's bane, I wasn't paying too much attention to how I was placing it, and I think that if I had turned it a little bit, we would see its face a little more, because I think it was facing, there's no sun today, but I think it was facing a certain direction. I suspect after a day or two it will right itself. It's totally fine, but I wanted to point that out, that the second grouping that we put in definitely appears to be much brighter and it's facing forward. So let's see in a day or two if the first grouping ends up facing forward like the second grouping is. Oh my goodness, so many daffodils. You know, at this point, I might as well pick out the biggest ones because we have so many. What I'm thinking of doing is not only putting some up along my driveway because I'm going to have so many, I think I'm also going to put some in my backyard. There's an area near my hosta garden that didn't have a lot of color in the spring. I'm going to put some there as well. So I have 3 really good size ones here, and now I can take some smaller ones. I don't want to take all the big ones because then if I put these in another area of my yard, none of them will bloom next year. So as long as I take 3 or 4 big ones, then I can take some small ones as well. Well, I'm hitting, I'm hitting rock here also. I'm wondering if, I know our septic tank is under here, and we do have areas that you can access the septic tank from. I don't know, but it doesn't matter. I'm going with it. Sometimes you just have to go with it. I think we've all done that before, where we're working on a project. We have something in our mind of what we want to do, and then an obstacle comes in the way. And you abort mission, or you work around it. Well, today we're working around it. Faith in gardening, and let's see what these guys do for us next year. So I'm just placing them around, some larger ones, some smaller ones. And now I'm just going to add the soil again to anchor the bulbs in so that they're not just all bunched on top of each other. There are a lot of worms. So much rain. I don't know if where you live you're getting a lot of rain, but we are getting a ton of rain lately. But I'm not complaining, it's good. We needed the rain. So we have the nice clump of leopard's bane, and then we have a clump of the daffodils, and then we're going to take out the next clump of daffodils. I am on that constant quest of succession when it comes to my perennial flowers, and I know that I'm not alone. A lot of people that buy plants from me have told me that they're on the similar quest because they find that there is a certain period of time when nothing's blooming, and they want to see color all the time without having to buy annuals. And I have to imagine that maybe you're on a similar quest. And I really think it takes years to figure that out. It's not an easy thing. I often look at other people's gardens for inspiration. And in fact, that's why I like to make these videos, so that you can kind of see what I'm trying to do here to get different colors going on in a bed at all times. One of the tricky things about doing a job like this is there are a lot of plants around. So I have to work around all these plants that are in this flower bed. We are making some great progress. I just wanted to chat a little bit about what's happening here. So you can see where we added the daffodils and where we kept the leopard's bane. And the one area where I personally feel it's a little too clumped, a little too messy, is right over here where the bird bath is. There's really not a lot of room between the Stella D'Oro daylily and the bird bath. So I need to look at that a little bit closer and think about what I'm doing here. Basically, with our pattern that we have going on, we're going to continue and we're going to put some daffodils here. We're going to leave that clump of the leopard's bane, but I'm thinking of removing a few of the clumps of leopard's bane right here, and then continuing our pattern of the leopard's bane here. What I'll probably do also is I can put a clump of daffodils right in here. I think that would look really pretty, so let's continue going with what we have here with our project. Honestly, because it's not raining, I'm just going to keep on going. I am really, really happy we're doing this. I'm enjoying this process. I just really am looking forward to what it's going to look like next year. And more than anything, I'm excited to finally have some color in this bed. For the last few weeks, I was like, oh no, there's really nothing blooming in this area. It's amazing how quickly things change in a flower bed as each week goes by. And well, I'm impatient. I don't want to wait for the daffodils to bloom. And I'm going to be putting annuals in the front within a week or two. But next year, I want to have those leopard's bane blooming in this bed. I can't wait. I'm so excited. And I can enjoy them this year too. And while I was working, I was really thinking hard about all these daffodils because I just have a lot. And what I'm going to do with these ones that are basically a mix of colors. Most of them are a light color. You know, there is a yellow one here, but most of them are a light color daffodil. So I was thinking hard about what do I want to do. I already have some that are up along my driveway. I would definitely like to add to that. But the other thing I'd like to do is, like I mentioned, right near my hosta garden, there wasn't a lot of color. And if I could just pop a whole bunch of these in that area, how nice would that be for next year? So when I give you a garden tour, it'll give both of us something to look forward to. Because I know for a fact when I was doing a garden tour of my backyard, there really wasn't a lot. There were some bulbs, but not a lot of bulbs. And well, all of these bulbs would really make an impact back there. And like I mentioned earlier, we have to be realistic with our time and what we have that we can do, because gardening should be fun. We don't want it to be overwhelming. It's okay to plan, but it's also important to be realistic. And I have a plan of what I want to do with these bulbs, but it's not going to happen today. And even if I put them in a bucket with some dirt, they'll be fine. The key is I want to get to them quickly. I don't want to have them sitting in that bucket for weeks. Maybe a week max. The bucket should have a hole in it. And I'll just plant these in some soil, give them a drink of water, let them sit outside so they continue to photosynthesize. And then when I have time, during the next 1 to 2 weeks, I can come in and I can complete this job. And this is what I'm talking about. Sometimes it just happens that we slice into a bulb. I feel bad, but I'm going to get over it quickly because we have things to do here. And like I mentioned, this area, because it's right near the woods, it's not the best for digging. It's hard digging. That's why oftentimes in my videos, you won't see me using any sort of a auger. I really can't. We're here where I live. No matter how much I've amended my flower beds, it's just not something that I can do. And what will end up happening is whatever bulbs are left behind in here, I can try to fish them out. Or if I left a bulb behind, it's just going to come through next year. And then I can pull it out then. Oh, so hard digging right here. Good thing we have plenty of bulbs. A lot of times when you plant bulbs, you might not plant them very deep. But then over the years, the bulb actually plants itself deeper and deeper, because that's probably what happened here. I'm sure I did not plant them as deep as they are right now. So we're trying to get out as many as we can, but we're not going to cry over spilt milk here. If we lose a few bulbs in the process, it's okay. You'll notice that a lot of these bulbs have already gone by. They're spent blooms on them. This is the time of year that you want to fertilize your bulbs. You can fertilize them when they're first coming up out of the ground, or you can fertilize them as soon as they've gone by, as soon as they've bloomed. Now, I know there's a lot of people, including myself, that have never fertilized their spring bulbs, and the bulbs come back just fine. So it's really up to you what you want to do, but I just want to share with you what the rules are, I guess, in terms of fertilizing your bulbs that are already established in your landscape. Another thing that I've learned about is you really should be removing the spent bloom, otherwise it starts to put its energy into seed pod. But again, if you don't do it, your bulb will be fine. That's just a common practice that I've heard about. Well, I don't know if it's actually common, but that's a practice that I've heard about, that it's good to get in that habit. Do I necessarily do it? Sometimes, but not always. Come on, little guy. And good enough. So remember, we have these clumps over here. I'm not sure if I'm going to remove all of them or some of them, but I'm definitely going to remove some of them. And if we pan this way, technically the next clump to remove, because we have a daffodil, we have leopard's bane, this would be the clump right here that we would be removing. And if you look at it, it looks kind of small. It doesn't look as nice as some of the clumps over here. So the way I look at it is, why would I dig that one up right now? Let's go after one over here. For right now, we have a clump here that will stay. And for right now, we have a clump that's right here that will stay. Let's go ahead and remove this, and who knows, maybe we can put some daffodils here. I can't really get in here and clean the mulch, so I'm just gonna go ahead and start digging. Some of the smaller clumps of the leopard's bane that are in here that still need to get pulled out, I will pull out. It's just a matter of I'll put it maybe in a different bed. Why not make the bed that we're working on high impact with nice big bunches since we have them? We might as well use them, right? I think visually that just looks nice. I'm almost thinking not to put daffodils there because I want to look at that bird bath. It's a beautiful piece in my garden, so why hide it? So I think we made the right move by removing that one leopard's bane that was in the way. I think for the scope of today's project, we did pretty well. I'm really happy with what we got accomplished. There's still more to do in terms of the bay window bed because I have plenty more leopard's bane to remove. And what I'm planning to do with that leopard's bane is move it into other flower beds that are close by to here. The flower beds that are right next door, actually. Now, as I'm placing these, I'm always checking them to make sure that I'm trying to place them so that the front is facing this way. Although I feel like with this one, every angle can be the front, but I think this way is the best. And I'll be sure to show you my process for what I'm going to do with the rest of those daffodils, because I want you to at least know, if you were in the same type of situation as me, what would you do with them, just to hold them over as you do other projects in your yard and you don't have time to get to them right away. And it's going to bug me about that first grouping of leopard's bane that we put in. Let's quickly just go and fix it so it's facing the other direction so we can really enjoy its blooms. I mean, I wouldn't have thought there's a front and a back to this plant, would you have? But from a distance, it just, I don't know, it's just not shining the way it should. So it's not in deep. We can easily fix it. No idea if this will make a difference, but it's worth the try. It could just be it doesn't have as many blooms on it as the other ones. But you can see it was pretty quick for me to do that. Well, I'd like to believe it looks better. This is what the final product looks like now that we've added some color in this bed. It was very simple. All we did was we just removed every other daffodil, and we replaced every other daffodil grouping with a grouping of plants that we already had in the yard, which were the leopard's bane. It just adds a little simple touch of color in this flower bed, color that was lacking, minus the remaining couple of daffodils that are still holding on to dear life. Other than that, there was no other color here. One small change, I feel, makes a big difference. And then next year, we'll see if the daffodils bloom at the same time as the leopard's bane. I don't think so. I think they're going to bloom beforehand. But even if they do, most of these daffodils were more of a white or a cream color. So I think they would look perfectly fine next to the yellow of the leopard's bane. I still have work to do, but we've been at it for quite a while. And, well, you know my cats, they need dinner. And now we're just looking at a different angle of this flower bed. And you can see I still have a number of leopard's bane that I still need to remove. And after I remove them, I'll be putting in about 10 or so daffodils in their place. And then on this side here, there are some very small leopard's bane. The reason they're small is we divided them and added them to this side of the flower bed last year. I have an idea for those. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do what we've been doing, which is keeping a clump, taking out a clump, keeping a clump, taking out a clump. But on the other side of the flower bed, look at those nice big clumps of leopard's bane. So I can always go shopping here and I can always take from there. and just make more of an impact on these little tiny leopard's bane that are on this side of the bed. But I have to tell you, I'm standing here at this flower bed looking down where we were working, and I'm noticing the leopard's bane down there. There wasn't any color there earlier, and now there is, and that just fills my heart. And as I move this way, once again, there isn't much color. There was color there a few weeks ago. There's no color anymore on this side of my garden, down below. So I think more leopard's bane will be added in the near future on this side of the garden. When it comes to the bulbs, I just need to temporarily store them. I could use something like this, and this is a common thing that a lot of people might have at their house. The only problem with it is that it can get very heavy once you put the soil in there. But it would work because it has the mesh bottom in there, so when you water your daffodils, at least the water can drain. I happen to have some of these. They're just, you usually have like Pepsi Cola or something that are in them. A friend of mine gave me a bunch of them. This works out really well because it's nice and sturdy. I'm just going to add a little bit of soil in here, and I know the soil is coming through the hole. I'm just putting a small amount because I want to make sure that the daffodils are good for a few days until I get to them. And then obviously if there are any daffodils that I destroyed at this point, they're just going to go, this is going to go into the compost pile. But any of the ones that are good, I'm just laying them down. Well, that is a lot of daffodils there. And all I'm going to do is just put a little bit of soil on here. Again, this is temporary. My goal is to tackle this project over the next week. And I'll give it a small drink of water. And then I'm going to leave these outside so that the sun can continue feeding the bulbs. And I'm going to show you where those bulbs are going to go. As we head in my backyard here, I noticed that I really didn't have a lot of spring bulbs down here. And I made a mental note that I need to add more bulbs to this area. Even though this area gets shady later in the year, during the spring months, it's not very shady. So daffodils would be fine in here. There are a few daffodils in here, but I want to pack it with daffodils. And now we have plenty of daffodils we can add to this space. I am thrilled that we tackled this project. Thank you for following me along. If you followed this video all the way to the end, I really appreciate it. And I hope more than anything, it inspired you, it gave you some ideas, and I really encourage you today, tomorrow, throughout the growing season, walk around your yard, look at your plants, look at how things are spaced, look at the color. Where is there a lot of color? Where is there color lacking? What can you move around? I challenge you to do the same thing. Get out there and start moving some plants around. A few of you have told me it's a little scary to divide plants. I totally get it. None of us want to lose plants. I lost a couple of daffodils today. It's sad, but this change that we made is a good change. Sometimes there will be losses in our garden, but do some of the things that I mentioned earlier. Do it on a day that it's cloudy or rainy. Make sure you water your plants after you've planted them. There are a lot of things you can do to make sure that you're not harming your plants too much or putting them under too much stress. As always, I love hearing from you. If you have any questions or any comments at all, please drop them down below. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening. And even though we turned this guy around, I think it's just a small little patch, and it's also starting to go by. That's the reason why it doesn't shine as much as its siblings. But wait until next year, and that little patch will catch up. I know it.